EastEnders Linda Carter, Kelly Bright, was left devastated earlier this year when son Johnny Carter, Charlie Suff, cut her out of his life for meddling in his relationship with Callum Highway, Tony Clay. But this week, there is a huge turning point in their estrangement when Johnny incurs the wrath of Grant Mitchell Roskemp over his treatment of his mom. Grant is currently back on the square in the wake of his friend Nigel Bates' Paul Bradley death, and has been getting close to Linda once again after the soap hinted at a romantic spark between them during his visit to Walford last year. As the pair spend more time together, Grant gives Linda some food for thought when she hears via her mum Elaine Peacock, Harriet Thorpe, that Johnny has got money problems. As a result, she decides to sell her share in Denise Fox's, Diane Parrish hair salon Fox & Hair, which she bought into back in 2022, after being paid off by her then love rival Janine Butcher, Charlie Brooks. Linda reaches out to Johnny with an olive branch by offering him the money from the sale of her share in the salon, but he shuts his mum down and orders her to stay out of his business. When a deflated Linda later runs into Grant and updates him, he tries to lift her spirits, but she snaps at him. Grant then takes matters into his own hands and gives Johnny some home truths at the cafe, as he seeks to repair the mother and son relationship. Could this be the push Johnny needs towards a reconciliation? And more importantly, could this spark the clear attraction between Linda and Grant? It would certainly be a plot twist given that Grant is the ex-husband of her best friend Sharon Watts Latita Dean, who hooked up with Grant again this time last year. And given Linda's jealousy at ex-Max Branning's, Jake Wood, blossoming romance with Cindy Beale, Michelle Collins, we wouldn't be surprised if she soon took comfort in Grant's muscly arms. In the latest tense twist in EastEnders, emotions in Albert Square reach breaking point as Johnny Carter makes a decision that sends shockwaves through his family and puts him directly at odds with his mother, Linda Carter. What begins as a disagreement over protection and control quickly escalates into a deeply personal fallout, one that exposes long-buried resentments, fragile loyalties, and a dangerous external threat in the form of Grant Mitchell. The story opens in the aftermath of a high-stress confrontation involving Linda, who has once again found herself caught in a situation spiraling beyond her control. Having endured years of turmoil, from battles with addiction to violent confrontations and emotional trauma, Linda is determined to take back authority over her life and her family's direction. Her latest decision, one she believes is necessary to protect those she loves, centers around cutting ties with a risky arrangement that Johnny has been quietly supporting behind the scenes. Johnny Carter, torn between loyalty to his mother and his belief that she is making an emotional mistake, takes a stand. For him, Linda's decision is not just impulsive, it's destabilizing. He sees it as another example of her acting on fear rather than logic, potentially jeopardizing opportunities that could secure their future stability. But what Johnny interprets as pragmatism, Linda experiences as betrayal. The tension between them builds in small, painful increments. At first, it is measured conversations filled with clipped sentences and controlled frustration. But soon the emotional restraint collapses. Johnny accuses Linda of refusing to trust anyone but herself, while Linda fires back that Johnny has no understanding of what she has survived to keep their family intact. Years of unresolved grief and responsibility come spilling into the open, making it clear that this is not just about one decision, it is about a lifetime of strained dependence. Johnny ultimately crosses a line that shocks even him. Feeling cornered and convinced that Linda's choice will bring consequences they cannot recover from, he makes a countermove without her consent. It is a calculated decision meant to override her authority, but it lands like a betrayal. When Linda discovers what he has done, the hurt is immediate and visceral. She does not see protection in his actions, she sees sabotage. The fallout is swift. Linda refuses to speak to Johnny, shutting down emotionally in a way that alarms those closest to her. Those around the Carter household notice the shift immediately. What was once a volatile but united family front has fractured into silence and suspicion. Even casual interactions become loaded with tension, as both mother and son navigate the same space while refusing to acknowledge each other fully. Johnny, meanwhile, is forced to reckon with the unintended consequences of his actions. While he believed he was acting in Linda's best interests, he begins to realize that he may have stripped her of agency at a time when she was trying to reclaim it. That realization does not bring immediate remorse, however. It brings defensiveness. He doubles down on his belief that Linda is too emotionally driven to see the bigger picture, setting him further apart from her emotionally even as he remains physically close. The situation takes a darker turn when Grant becomes aware of the internal fracture within the Carter family. Never one to miss an opportunity, Grant views the tension as a weakness he can exploit. His involvement is subtle at first, carefully timed remarks, suggestive conversations, and strategic positioning that places him closer to Linda at a vulnerable moment. He presents himself as someone who understands pressure, control, and survival in a way Johnny does not. But Grant's interest is not purely observational. He has his own agenda, and Johnny's interference has disrupted a path he was quietly engineering. When he learns the extent of Johnny's decision-making behind Linda's back, Grant's patience runs out. Their confrontation is explosive. Grant does not tolerate being undermined, especially by someone he perceives as inexperienced and emotionally reactive. Johnny, however, refuses to be intimidated, standing his ground despite the clear danger in escalating tensions with a man like Grant. The exchange is less about physical confrontation and more about psychological dominance, Grant making it clear that Johnny has stepped into territory he does not understand, while Johnny insists that he is protecting his family from manipulation. For Linda, the situation becomes increasingly impossible to navigate. She is caught between two forces: a son she feels has betrayed her trust, and a man like Grant whose influence carries an undeniable threat. Yet what disturbs her most is not Grant's interference, but the growing realization that Johnny believes he is justified in overriding her decisions for her own good. As the emotional distance between mother and son widens, Linda begins to withdraw further into herself. Those close to her worry that she is reverting to old coping mechanisms, internalizing stress, isolating herself, and refusing support. Johnny, on the other hand, begins to feel the weight of isolation from a different angle. His conviction that he is right does not shield him from the emotional consequences of being shut out by his mother. The turning point comes when an external consequence of Johnny's decision begins to surface, validating Linda's original fears. The fallout proves more complicated and damaging than Johnny anticipated, forcing him to confront the possibility that his attempt to control the situation has made it worse rather than better. For the first time, doubt begins to creep in, not enough to undo his actions, but enough to fracture his certainty. Grant, however, is far from finished. Recognizing weakness where others see conflict, he subtly positions himself as an alternative source of guidance for Linda, carefully framing himself as someone who can handle situations Johnny cannot. His interest is not purely protective, it is strategic and possibly opportunistic. By the time the dust settles, the Carter household is no longer a place of shared resilience, but a fractured battleground of competing loyalties. Linda is left questioning not only Johnny's judgment, but whether she can trust anyone to make decisions that affect her life. Johnny, meanwhile, is forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that protecting someone does not always mean controlling their choices. And in the shadows of their conflict, Grant Mitchell watches, calculating his next move with the patience of someone who knows that fractured families rarely heal cleanly, and often present the easiest opportunities for those willing to exploit them. What began as a disagreement has now evolved into a full-scale emotional war, with no clear resolution in sight. In true EastEnders fashion, the question is no longer just who is right or wrong, but how much damage will be done before anyone is willing to step back and truly listen. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to EastEnders Spoilers Official.